Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today's episode is called Divorce Fugitives. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel for free. You can also like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so make sure to click on the notification bell so you can be notified every time we upload a new episode. I'd also like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It's a great service that allows you to purchase live phone calls from your favorite celebrities, so check it out. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now, let's get started. They say that 2/3 of all marriages end in divorce. Other people claim that that percentage is much higher when you factor in all the people who are married but can't afford a lawyer to get a divorce. So a lot of these people, what do? They just walk away. They say about 45% of millennials are refusing to get married. And compared to previous generations, they say that number is at an all-time low. Now, there are an awful lot of people out there who are just enjoying recreational sex. And when they have access to plenty of that, why bother getting married, they think. But it's more than that. The reason that so many millennials are refusing to get married is that they are burdened with astronomical levels of tuition debt. And as everybody knows, tuition debt is like a bad rash. You can't get rid of it by discharging it in bankruptcy court. It's just there forever. We now live in an era where the list of reasons to get married is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. If you go on YouTube, you'll see countless people talking about their refusal or their reluctance to marry, or what happens after they got married and got divorced. Some of these videos have people talking about their divorce judgments, and these divorce judgments are the scariest horror movie you have ever seen. They're unbelievable. Go to YouTube and do a search for the word divorce. And one of the first things that you'll notice is how many of these videos get very high numbers of views. The reason for that is that this subject matter is on the mind of every man thinking about getting married or contemplating getting a divorce. And believe me, there are a lot of them. And now they realize that their concerns are not just their concerns, that most people in that predicament have the same concerns as they do. Getting married is a very dangerous option for people who have serious money, but it's even more dangerous, if you're middle class or poor and you're just working and scraping by, living a marginally successful life, financial life. Why is that? Well, because if you're making $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 a year and you get a divorce and you're forced to pay alimony or child support or both, and you're also forced to pay your taxes and your living expenses, that's an express train to living back in your mama's basement. Thank God for mama, because without mama, most divorced people would be living on the streets. And a lot of them are right now, too. If you go to LA, if you go to Vegas, if you go to New York, it is a sight to behold. Everybody always goes up to these homeless people on the streets and they say, you know what was it that caused you to be divorced? Did you lose your job? Did you get hooked on drugs? Was it alcoholism? But just once, I would like to see these reporters ask, so was it a divorce that made you homeless? You know why they don't ask that question? Because it wouldn't be popular with their advertisers. But I suspect that the answer in many cases would be yes. A lot of these people had their financial brains blown out by a divorce decree, a divorce judgment. You know what's worse than getting a divorce? I'll tell you. It's getting your second or your third divorce. It's amazing how many people who take a bullet the first time will dive back in for number two or number three. It is just amazing to me. When I listen to guys talk about their divorces, the thing that I hear most often is how draconian or unreasonable or illogical some judges in some states can be when people get divorces in front of them. California judges are famous around the world for being extraordinarily biased and anti man and anti father. Statistically, there's no way of denying that. When you see what they do over there, it is amazing. Some judges are so severe and illogical and draconian in the judgments they render on some of these cases that, get ready for this. This one still amazes me every time I tell people this. If your wife has a child by another man and that man is not paying child support, and your wife wants you to pay, and she files a petition, and you get a DNA test proving that you are not the father of her child, because obviously it was fathered by another man. In many instances now, the divorce courts will still have you pay child support to this child, which is not yours, rather than the state of California paying child support. They figure it's better to burden you than to burden the state of California. This is why so many men now refuse to date women who have children. Those kids may be the greatest and most wonderful kids in the world, but that doesn't mean that another man can or is even able to support them if they aren't his. So, what are some of the crazy divorce judgments that people are being hit with these days? Well, the list is really long, and you can Google a lot of these. You'll be amazed. I hear a lot of stories about celebrities who used to make millions of dollars a year, and then their TV show gets canceled or the movie deals stop coming in, and their income drops by 95% the following year. So what happens? The marriage hits the rocks. The spouse decides, well, you know what? I'm just not feeling it anymore. I think I'm going to leave. But before I do, I have a little present for you. These are divorce papers. So the spouse files for divorce and demands that she continue to receive alimony or child support based on your previous higher income rather than on the husband's current much, much, much lower income. Because she doesn't wish, or the spouse doesn't wish, to have the quality of their life lowered or diminished just because his life has been lowered or diminished. What's one got to do with the other, right? So if even if he doesn't have the money, then some courts are now threatening to arrest and imprison the previously high wage earning spouse for refusing to continue to pay high child support or alimony when they're jobless, when there's no income. It's fascinating. It's fascinating how that's even possible. What's interesting about threatening to jail somebody who can't do what a divorce judgment orders them to do, no matter what, it's just not mathematically or financially possible, is that oftentimes you're threatening to put someone in jail who has never been arrested before or put in jail before, and probably hasn't even had a traffic ticket in the last 5 or 10 years. Here's the interesting part. Some courts are now releasing hardened criminals from prison because of the pandemic. They don't want these guys to get sick, and they don't want them staying in jail for that reason. But if you don't pay child support, which you can't pay because you don't have a job, they're more than willing to throw you in the prison, throw you behind bars without any hesitation at all. Pandemic, schmandemic. So what do desperate people do in situations like this? Well, if you were faced with going to jail because of something you couldn't fix, something you had no control over, then what do you think most people would do? Some people will try and get fake ID, and that may or may not work. Other people will become what's known as divorce fugitives. That's an interesting phrase, isn't it? Divorce fugitives. What is that, you ask? Well, these are people who will literally turn their backs on the US and flee to another country with the hope of avoiding imprisonment back home. One of the reasons that the Philippines, Mexico, Central and South America, as well as other countries are so popular with divorced refugees is because they're much easier to disappear in. They don't have millions of traffic cams with facial recognition on every street corner. They don't have a highly computerized infrastructure that micromanages the move of every person, citizen or non-citizen in the country. In some of these places, some experts speculate that as many as a third of the people walking the streets have fake IDs. Another advantage is that if you are arrested in a lot of these places, you can often buy your way out of the problem by handing the cops, a few bucks. In some of these places, the police make more money taking bribes than they do from government paychecks each week, just like in the United States. Lastly, there's always the non-extradition law that some of these places have. A lot of divorced refugees are moving to non-extradition countries to try and add another layer of safety and protection for themselves and the US court system. This may or may not work, but for many of them, it adds an emotional comfort level to their decision to flee the US. So if you know someone in this predicament, we don't advise they do any of this because obviously it's illegal. But if they're faced with deciding to spend years in an American prison or fleeing the country, then that is a very difficult decision to make, especially given how many people are killed or beat up every day in American prisons for no reason at all, other than somebody may want your shoes or they may want your towel, whatever the case is. Maybe they're trying to rape you and you object, whatever it is. A lot of these people are getting beat up and killed regularly because of predicaments like that. It's just terrible. So with that, I want to thank you for watching. I want to tell you that we're going to have more great celebrity interviews and more breaking news stories coming up in the future. So we encourage you to subscribe to our free channel and click on the notification bell so you can get notified every time we post a new story. Bye-bye.